on the top of this paper, you will notice there are lines. Use those lines to define what a winter constellation is. If you look up at the screen, it tells you winter constellations are constellations that are only visible during the winter months.
So that's the only thing we need, right?
Let's pretend that this area of the sky down here is what represents the winter constellations. Now, the reason that we have winter constellations, meaning constellations that we can only see during the winter time, again has to do with that tilt of the earth, with the earth not being perfectly up and down. That means, so at this point in time in the year, America would be able to see the winter constellations. But as it revolves around the sun, suddenly, here in America, we could no longer see the constellations that are down there. So as we revolve around, there ends up being places where we can see them, and then places where we cannot. So it's because of that revolution of the earth around the sun that we end up having points of time in the year where we can see those constellations and not simply because of the tilt of the earth. So keep that in mind, and you can also use that as just a precursor for whoever it was yesterday that asked if we were going to talk about seasons. That tilt of the earth is also why we have seasons. So the earth being tilted like it is why we have seasons, and it's also why we have seasonal constellations. So our 6 seasonal constellations: Canis Major, Canis Minor, Gemini, Orion, Taurus, and Auriga. The first of these we are going to talk about is Orion. Now, we talked about Orion a little bit yesterday, so I don't need to say a ton about him. But on the lines for that, you can go ahead and write that Orion is the hunter. Now, Orion the hunter appears in the winter sky with his bow and his hunting dogs. This is why we're going to talk about him before the other two. His hunting dogs, which we will talk about in a minute, are Canis Major and Canis Minor, which travel behind him. Greek mythology tells us that Orion was known as a talented hunter. His boast was that he could rid the earth of all of the wild animals. However, this angered the earth goddess Gaia, and she used her scorpion to defeat Orion. Orion lost the battle with the scorpion and was later found by the goddess Artemis, who begged the gods to bring him back to life. But when they refused, she put his picture into the sky so that she would always remember him. Up there in the stars with him are his 2 beloved hunting dogs, Canis Major and Canis Minor. Now, Canis Major is pretty easy to recognize as far as trying to see it as a dog. You've got a head, you've got feet, you've got back feet, and you have a tail. So, Canis Major on the lines, you are going to write the big dog. Canis Major is commonly taken to represent the greater or the larger of the hunting dogs which Orion took with him on his hunts. So right here at the neck of the dog is Sirius. You will also recognize that from Harry Potter lore, Sirius Black. For those who know Harry Potter, Sirius Black could transform into a dog.
A big dog.
So J.K. Rowling took that name Sirius from mythology, being the dog star, part of the great dog, and named her character Sirius, who could transform himself into a dog. So Canis Major is the big dog. Canis Minor.
This is not even a dog. What the? That's so hard.
I am not the one that created these constellations. I'm not sure how the Greeks decided to look up in the sky and see these two stars and connect the dot and say, that is a dog. But somehow they did.
That's cool.
So again, Orion was the hunter. Into the stars, put into the stars with Orion was his hunting dogs. Canis Major, the big dog. Canis Minor, the little dog. So our next is Gemini. Gemini, which is also one of our signs of the zodiac for around the June month. Gemini is the twins. Now, the twins' names were Castor and Pollux. And they were warriors that would often go off to fight. During one of the battles, though, the Castor was killed. And Pollux, being twin, if you've ever known twins, twins are often inseparable. Like they always need each other. And Pollux was just heartbroken. His twin had died. Now, for those who know Harry Potter lore, and I know that you're a Harry Potter nerd, so there's at least one. Okay. Think about Fred and George. Okay. And one of them ends up dying in battle. So yet again, J.K. Rowling has stolen from the mythological story.
Why did she say?
Now, Pollux, the one twin who survived, Pollux went to Zeus and pleaded with him. Please, he's my brother. Bring my brother back to life. And Zeus agreed to help immortalize his brother on the condition that they only spent half their time on Earth and the other half of the time in the stars. So this one's act does actually bring into play the seasons. So we can see them half the time, and that's the time they're spending in the stars, and then their legend says they're alive on Earth for the other half of the year. So part of their story is why they are only a winter constellation. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind, this was the ancient Greeks that told these stories. United States is here in the northern hemisphere. Oh, listening. The United States is here in the northern hemisphere. Greece is over here, also in the northern hemisphere. So, for the people in the southern hemisphere, Australia, South Africa, Argentina, these are different. So, what we consider our winter constellations, Australia and the other people of the southern hemisphere see all year long. And the circumpolar that we see all year long, they only see half of the year. This also plays along with the seasons as far as when it is summer in America, it is winter in Australia. And when it's winter in America, it's summer in Australia. The northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere are opposite seasons, which gets really weird to think about come Christmas. Because the Australians celebrate Christmas during the summer on the beach.
I know that.
So,
that
okay, Auriga. Auriga looks a lot like Cepheus, except he doesn't have the little scepter hand. Simply put on the line, Auriga is a charioteer. This is one of the people who rides in the chariot that's pulled by the horses, often for racing. In one myth, Auriga the charioteer is the son of Hermes, who was the messenger of the gods, could run really fast. He served King Oenomaus of Pisa. Oenomaus had a beautiful daughter. Here we are again with those Greek love stories. So Oenomaus had a beautiful daughter, Hippodamia, and he was determined not to give her hand away to any of the suitors. So this dad, Oenomaus, he's like, look, daughter, you're not getting married. Mm-mm. Those boys are trouble.
He's a boy.
Anybody who would come as a suitor for his daughter, he would challenge to a chariot race. And then, as they were racing, as he caught up to them, rather than just winning the race, he would kill them. So,
Morbid.
with Auriga driving the king's chariot, so he's the one that actually drove the chariot for the king, basically none of the suitors were ever going to marry her because they never made it until Pelops was his name. He was the son of a guy named Tantalus. So he's this prince. He's come to marry her. And Hippomania says, I like this man. And he likes me. And I know what's going on here, and I don't want him to die. So she goes to Auriga, who she knows drives the chariot. She goes to Auriga and says, please make it so he comes back alive. The charioteer, who was also in love with the king's daughter, but knew that would never happen because he's the king's servant, and there's no way a servant's going to marry the daughter, obeys the king's daughter, and tampers with the chariot, so that as they're racing after and they're going to kill this guy, the wheels fall off. And Auriga is thrown from the chariot when this happens, and the charioteer ends up being the one that dies. Now remember, he was son of Hermes, who is the messenger for the gods. So Hermes has it in with the gods, and Hermes is like, gods, can you do something about this? And the gods are like, here, now your son can forever live in the stars. So the next one I actually talked with Macy a little bit about yesterday, because the constellation that she created was a cow. This is Taurus, another of our zodiac signs. Taurus is a bull. According to Greek mythology, the constellation Taurus commemorates the god Zeus. Now, we all talked about how Zeus was a player. Okay, so there's this maiden that lived down on the earth. Her name was Europa, and she was a princess. Now notice Europa come from the same root. Now Zeus was like, hey Europa, but he didn't want to just walk up to her as a god because when you're the king of the gods, it kind of freaks people out. And so he watched her and he was like, what kinds of things does she like? And he came to find that she's an animal lover. So he transforms himself into this beautiful white bull. And he just kind of strolls near her. And she loves it. Like, this creature is amazing. She's an animal lover. And a white bull? That never happens.
Albino bull.
So she trains this bull, which is obviously pretty easy because it's actually Zeus trying to win her over anyway. And then she rides the bull. Except once she's riding the bull doesn't do what she wants. The bull runs off.
Zeus.
And he takes her to the island of Crete, which is in Europe. Okay, Europa, Europe. Okay. he takes her to this island, changes from being a bull, and shows that he is, look, I am Zeus, the king of the gods. And so this bull Taurus is supposed to represent that bull which Zeus changed him into to try and win over yet another woman.
He was an actual bull still. But then a bull died for it?
No. So this is more like a monument or a statue or it's not actually like a bull that had to die. This is just to represent
My mind's confused.
the bull that Zeus changed into. He put this bull into the sky like so he could be like, look, remember that thing I did? I was that bull. Your final picture needs to be a quick sketch of what the winter sky looks like. Now, if you were to actually look up in the sky during the winter time and it was a clear enough night and a dark enough area that you could see the stars, this is what you would be able to see along with the circumpolar constellations that we can always see.
Like the Big Dipper.
So this, you would be able to see this. The easiest of these constellations to find is Orion.
Really?
You can find the 3 stars that make his belt, and then once you've found Orion,
Orion's belt.
once you've found Orion, off of Orion, you are able to find all the other constellations. Off of his belt, it points right over here at the Dog Star. His arm points right up at the Twins. His shoulder kind of points out at Canis Minor. His head points at the others, and his little bow is shooting over at Taurus.
He's gonna kill. He's killing Taurus.
So if you can find Orion's belt, off of Orion, you are able to locate the rest of the constellations.
Can't just draw one.
Now, after you finish drawing this, please fold this paper and put it in your workbook with the other one.